Your mindset is probably the most important thing. That is your best real estate is right in here. And, one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford. He said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And, as time has gone on, I've realized that it's mostly, this is a confidence thing. It's not, you could teach anybody how to do real estate investing. It's not rocket science. You could teach a 5-year-old, you could teach a monkey probably, but it's a confidence to be able to go and take those first steps.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to my show. My name is Tiffany Alexander, and I'm so excited to have you here. Just a smidge about me. I'm a huge fan of networking, masterminds, high level rooms where I can be not the smartest person in the room to glean all the advice and information that I can get from everyone. And when I meet some of the coolest people I've ever met, I always like to ask them, hey, who do you know that I need to know? Or, oh my gosh, I think I need to tell you the people that I know so that way I can share them with you. And in all of that, I get to interview some of the most fun people, most amazing people, and impactful people. And that's my show. So with that, I'm so excited. Our guest today is Mr. Mike Wolf, and I love all of the stuff that he's doing in his story. And so everybody, please welcome Mike and tell everybody a little bit about you and what you're up to right now.
All right, where do I start? So thanks for having me, first of all. And I've been a real estate investor for 36 years. So been doing this for a little while. And it's these days I've created a lot of passive income over the years. And these days I mostly travel and have fun while my teams are still producing results. So I basically have a few different businesses. One is I have rental properties all over the place. I have other people look after them. Money shows up in my bank account at the end of the month, and I don't have to do any work for that. So I love that part. Secondly, I also teach people how to do what I do. So occasionally I do some training over Zoom, and that one does actually require me, but I do it not that frequently. Number three is I meet a lot of people that need to be invested in real estate. They don't have the time, for example, doctors, lawyers, engineers. And so I have a turnkey operation where I basically buy properties in bulk. We fix them up, put tenants in place. My property management team looks after it. And then I sell these properties to other people who really will never be able to retire unless they start creating some passive income for themselves. So I help them to do that. And then right now, as of a year ago, I started a new project in that where we developed a villa in Bali, which went very well. So I'm looking to scale that. And so that's probably going to be quite a bit of my focus over the next few years is building that up some more. So in a nutshell, that is what I do.
Love it so much. And this is like what I wanted to be when I grew up. Before somebody talked me out of like just going into the paper side, like I was gonna be a landlord, I was gonna have all these houses, I'm gonna do all this stuff. Except you kind of took a left turn to decide to start to re-educate people, or sorry, educate people along the way, which is what I loved about your story is that you were like, wait a minute, this curriculum, what are you doing? Like bring it to these people. So I want to do this. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about like where are you from and what did you even think that you wanted to be growing up? Everybody wants to be a doctor or I want to be an astronaut, right? Like tell me the beginning part of the story and we'll start from there.
Yeah, well, actually, I did not want to be a doctor. That was my mom's wish for me, doctor or lawyer. That's all I ever heard growing up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a firefighter. I thought that seemed really kind of cool. But anyway, as I got older, being a real estate investor actually never really came to mind until I actually by mistake became a real estate investor. So I was actually going to school, once again living my mom's dream. I got my first degree and I was going for my law degree. And by the time I graduated with that first degree, I had so much debt and student loans. I decided, you know what, before I go and get further in debt, I want to get this paid off and then I'll go back. And that's where things took a good pivot. I got a job at the phone company, which at the time was union, it was government run, so it overpaid, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
And while I was there paying off my student loan debt, I managed to actually purchase my very first home to live in. And shortly after I did that, my mortgage broker calls me up and goes, Mike, if you want, I could get you another mortgage if you want to buy another property. And I go, and at the time I'm like 23 years old, single, like, why do I need another property? And so he tells me, well, you buy another home, you put a tenant in there, they pay your mortgage for you. And then eventually that thing is paid off. And then that's your retirement. I go, okay, that makes sense. So I, of course, didn't know anything about real estate at the time, didn't really know how to pick a property. So I chose one that was pretty, and also one that was close to where I live. And by the way, that's not what you should do. But I got really lucky because the market, probably around 2 years after I bought my two properties, the market took off. And all of a sudden, I was sitting on all this equity, still working at the phone company, and thinking, okay, in the last 2 years, I made this much in real estate. And I made this much going to my job. And I don't really love my job. It was okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And I made this much in real estate not knowing what I'm doing. And so at that point, I was hooked. And I quickly did what anybody in their mid 20s would do and told their mom, nope, I'm not going to law school. I'm not living your dream. I'm living my new dream. And my mother begged me at the time, like, go get your second degree so you have something to fall back on. And but it was actually important that I told her that, Mom, I've got this. Don't worry about me. I've got this. And so when my next deal went the exact opposite and was a massive failure because I didn't know what I was doing, I just got lucky on the first deal. Because I had told my mom that, don't worry, I knew I had to figure things out. And so I did what I should have done in the first place. I got a mentor who showed me how to do real estate properly and
Wait, so who was your
had
first mentor? What does that look
my
like?
first
Tell me
mentor was
more.
just a local. I'm actually from Calgary, Canada. It was just a local investor who was flipping homes at the time. Yeah, I remember my first property was meant to be a long term hold. That was supposed to be my retirement plan, and then suddenly I quit my job. So now I'm not qualifying for mortgages anymore. Uh, so I was a little bit kind of, I think my ego kind of got the best of me and said, oh, you've got this. You know how to do it. You're smart. So of course you can make money in real estate. So once again, the first deal was just luck. I had really good timing. Couldn't duplicate that. And so it's just a local investor that nobody would know the name. They wouldn't recognize the name. And but that changed everything forever because, and I'm not saying everything went smooth after that because that would also be a lie. But I didn't make some of the big mistakes that made on my next deal, and that's what kept me in the game. Otherwise, you might be interviewing me right now. We might be talking about real estate law, but I certainly wouldn't be talking to you as a real estate investor. So that's my story. I never did go back and get the next degree, have no desire to. And it was a very good mistake. And even when I messed up on the next deal, it was actually a really good mistake because I think it's important to have that humbling lesson that, hey, you don't know, you're not a know-it-all. And so I became what I call learn it all. And that's the only reason I'm still here after 36 years is because I decided I wanted to learn. And every time I get knocked down, I'd learn something new and figure out how to not make that same mistake. And real estate's been very, very good to me. So that's why I love teaching. I love being on a podcast like this so I can go and hopefully inspire somebody who might be struggling with this and hopefully help them stay in the game because nobody thought I was going to succeed. So I like to show people they can do this.
Absolutely. I love that. And I mean, I think it's like at times at bat, like how many times are you going to get back up when something goes wrong? And hopefully you fail fast and fail quick. So you're not taking all these properties down with you, right? All right. So you moved right into your next property. I mean, this is just into your 20s. How quickly did it go to get bigger from here?
Well, back then, it was one property at a time. There was no scale to it. It was just I'd look for a deal and put it together, and I wouldn't really at first have the money to do the next deal until I closed the previous deal. And so it started off very slow and steady, but it's good because I learned. I wasn't, had I had more money, I might have made a much bigger mistake and been wiped out. And so it was slow and steady, and that's what I recommend other people do if they're getting into this. Don't be in a rush. Don't just learn the ropes with smaller projects. Just do one, and then after you've mastered quite a few of them, then at that point scale. So I'd say most of my he's into my early 30s. It was just like one here, one there kind of thing. And
Yeah,
then over time, I was fortunate enough that I love, as you mentioned, networking. I love networking too. And I started to meet some more and more people and more opportunities started to come my way. And of course, my capital improved over the years and it allowed me to scale, but it wasn't overnight. And I wouldn't recommend that somebody try to do that overnight.
man. This is so inspiring because this is what it's all about. Is like if you can't do two, then you do one. And if you don't know what you're doing, link arms with somebody else that can. And I mean, by all means, there's so much more education that's available at your fingertips. It's almost scary though, because could be wrong. it could be wrong, right? It could be
Well,
old.
there's unfortunately the good thing is there's a lot of information. The bad thing is not always the best information. And there's a million and one different ways to make money in real estate. So there's no one right way. But I think some of the challenge is, well, who do you listen to? Like if you're watching a whole bunch of different things on YouTube, for example, well, they're all going to teach you different, sometimes conflicting things. So one of the things I'm most known for is tax deeds. And when somebody hasn't paid their property taxes in a bunch of years, that home eventually goes up for auction, and you can pick up properties quite often for pennies on the dollar, much like what you're doing with notes, just a different kind of a different animal. But while I was trying to learn how to do that strategy like 15 years ago, the more I tried to study it, the more confused I got, because one person would say, "Oh no, it works like this," and then somebody else would say, "No, it works like that," and it's like sometimes it gets overwhelming having too much information, and sometimes you're better off actually. Well, I had to make myself the guinea pig and just test stuff and see what was true and what was false. And luckily, I had the capital at that point to. I knew that in the long run, that was going to be a really good strategy for me and make me a lot of money. So I knew I had to invest and take some losses along the way to figure out how it all works. And but anyway, you don't have to do that, but just make sure you have somebody who knows what they're doing, who's already paved the path before you, that you're following in their footsteps. So,
I love that. What's cool is since you already understand the idea that somebody can get overwhelmed in the information and the people that you are being able to just connect to the end deal that you're working on, they are the over analytical that would have analysis by paralysis, right? Like they just slow down in this when it's like, let me do it for you. And then you just kind of pop out the other side and keep doing what you want to do best. Okay. So you've invented all this stuff. Let's get further into the story where you tell me like, oh, like even you don't have to go into your lows, but like tell me more about the journey it paved for you.
yeah, well, if you want, I'm happy to talk about my lows because I think that's where a lot of the best lessons are. Everybody's always happy to come on and talk about their successes and the things that
Yeah,
went
let's do it.
well. Well, actually, I'll talk about that second deal of mine because that almost wiped me out, and it could have wiped me out. It would have been very easy for me just to say to my mother, "You know what? You're right. I'm going to go get my next degree." But once I had to taste that success, I knew it was possible, and I knew there were other people doing it. But yeah, I mean, the next deal before I consulted with anybody, like I said, I just wanted to duplicate my first win, but only do it faster because now I had gotten rid of the job. And so luckily I had some money that I got from the earliest deal. But yeah, like I didn't get the home inspected, for example. I just thought it looked pretty. So of course it's going to be great. Well, I would never, ever, ever, even if I bought a brand new home straight from the builder, I would still get it inspected. I would never, ever buy a home without an inspection ever again. And, it turned out that there were these electrical problems and there was plumbing issues and it wasn't a brand new home, but it wasn't that old a home. So I thought, well, what's the worst thing could happen? And I thought I'd save, back then maybe $100 is all it costs for an inspection. Now it's considerably more, but
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, I was trying to cut down on my costs, and so I got a lot of lessons from that property. But I think the biggest one was just, as you mentioned earlier, just getting back up again. Failing forward fast, and just getting back up again. And once again, I owe it to my mom because I still to this day haven't told her that she was technically right and that I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, there's just these different things that would have been so avoidable that today is just automatic. It's a reflex. I buy a home, it's subject to inspection, simple as that. And so, but yeah, all these little lessons, all these failures, I wouldn't even call them failures. I just think they're lessons that allow you to do things better. But if you want to hear about my worst property, I'll tell you that story. So
Love
back
it.
Okay, so back in the old days when I started to acquire properties for rental that was actually holding on to instead of flipping, I was doing my own property management, which I don't recommend that anybody does. And I took in a tenant that it turns out turned my home into a grow op, which means that this is in Canada. Now I do all my investing in the US and now Bali. But back then I was doing all my investing in Canada and apparently you need a lot of heat. So they had all these heat lamps in the house and they were cultivating their crops or I don't know what the proper
Props is a
terminology is,
good word.
whatever it was. And so anyway, these tenants, they seem like dream tenants at first. Like their checks always cleared. They never missed a payment. They never called for any like repairs on anything. And I thought they were like the dream tenants. And probably after about 10 months after they moved in, all of a sudden a check bounced. I go, that's so weird. These guys have never bounced a check. So I tried calling the tenant, but his phone was disconnected. So I went to the house, knocked on the door, no answer. So I left a note saying, "Hey, can you please call me? Your check bounced. I'm sure it's just an oversight. Can you please call me?" And I never got a call. So the next day I went back and I put a note on the door saying, "Hey, you know what? Give me a call. I'm giving you 24 hours notice. I want to make sure you're like not dead inside the home or something." So I gave him 24 hours notice, which was the law where I owned that property, and still didn't hear back. So the next day I go in there to find that all his stuff is gone except for the remnants of his draw up, and the whole home was like covered in black mold. Anyway, this is in the knees, and I had a $75,000 repair bill to make that home livable again. And $75,000 was, well, it still would be a lot of money in this day, but in that day it was a heck of a lot of money. And once again, it was I don't know, my heart just sank when I saw what the home looked like compared to how it looked when I gave it to him. So anyway, it was a very expensive lesson. But the other thing I learned is that eventually, when I did go to sell that property many years later, even despite that huge bill, I still made money on it. And so between the cash flow and the eventual appreciation, and so at the time it was heartbreaking. In the long run, it's like, man, almost any property, if you hold on to it long enough, you can fix whatever goes wrong, and it'll still work out in the long run. The other thing I learned is that even though I thought I was an amazing property manager, apparently there's people much better at it than me because they don't have that problem where you get that $75,000 bill from a grow ups. So I learned a lot of very expensive but hard lessons. And but once again, that's why I tell people, don't try to figure this out on your own, because things like that, you're not going to learn until it's too late, and it's going to be anyway. Just be really careful and make sure you know what you're doing, and make sure you have somebody to show you the proper way to do it. And it was so avoidable. And as a matter of fact, it turned into a policy. Now I have property management teams in the cities that I own properties in. Some of the cities where I have uh, a large amount of properties, I actually developed a property management team specifically for me. And so one of the things that we do now, and I recommend everybody use this if you have rental properties, is before I tell somebody that yeah, you can move in, your credit looks good and your references checked out. It's so easy to make fake references, by the way. Before you do that, show up at the place. My property managers will show up at the place where these people are currently living and say, "Hey, you know what? I was just in the neighborhood. I need this one piece of paper signed. I hope you don't mind that I knocked on your door." But the good thing is now you can see how they're currently living. And whatever they're doing to that house is what your home will eventually look like. And so they say they have no pets. Well, how do you verify that? They said on an application have no pets. Well, if they have 12 dogs running around the backyard, and by the way, another property of mine, they were raising dogs. According to the neighbor, I found this out much later. They had like 12 dogs in the home. So, anyways, you can find out a lot about what your house is going to look like by doing something like that and going and paying them a surprise visit.
This is a golden nugget that I didn't even add to the thing. Well, I don't flip houses anymore, but like, this is incredible. This is the kind of stuff. And by all means, you were telling me all this information. And one piece of advice that I feel like applies 100% to everybody right now that you're listening, you're going to pay for it. You just need to decide if you want to pay for the cost of ignorance or if you want to pay for the cost of education, whether that be a course, a mentor, books. I don't care what it is, but you are going to pay for it. You're just going to decide if you're going to stumble forward and do it the wrong way with ignorance and maybe get lucky a few times, but like just let someone take you under their wing so that way you can go and not have to make these silly mistakes in real estate. There are probably checklists that everybody's invented at this point to be able to go into. Man, this is incredible. Okay, so
There's a second part I'll add to that.
yeah,
Just on the top, I'm going to give away some more free education. So the other thing that I do is I tell the tenant, or actually my property manager these days tells the tenant, "Hey, we come in every 90 days to check on the home, and we come in and we change the batteries and the smoke detectors, and we change the filters in the furnace." And the real reason we do that is we know if they're planning on doing something in the home they're not supposed to do, they're never going to agree to that. And so that has probably, I don't even know how much money that has saved me, but there's been a lot of tenants that changed their mind once I told them. And that's probably the best way to get rid of it, to evict a tenant, is to have them not move in the first place. So you can use those things if you're starting to purchase, or if you own some rental properties, that should be your new policy from now on.
100%. This is incredible. You're like dropping bombs over here that obviously you do well at this. So
Well,
listen to my
I don't know what 75,000 $1993 are worth now, but that that could have been solved by those two things right there. It could have been totally solved. Um, we learn from our mistakes and we do things better. We put better systems in place.
My goodness. Well, so when did you scale from just doing single family one at a time to being able to be like, you know what? I think I'm going to change this up. Tell me how that went.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So further down the road, I started to do multifamily, and as I mentioned earlier, though, I'm a nomad. I travel full time these days, and I found that when I did multifamily, I could hire a team, especially larger multifamily. I would hire a team to deal with things, but more often than not, they still have to call me and say, "Hey, Mike, the boiler is broken, or this happened, or that happened." When things go wrong on multifamily, it's a lot more expensive. And so I actually stopped doing that and just kept doing the single family. And that's one of the lessons I also like to give people is it's not necessarily graduating. Going from single family to multifamily isn't necessarily graduation. You're just going from one strategy to a different strategy. And there's advantages to both, and there's disadvantages to both. So I have a friend of mine who owns I'm not sure how many units. Let's call it 100 units in Dallas, and his insurance rates literally tripled, and he went from a cash flowing property to now a cash losing property. And of course, nobody wants to buy a property that's losing. So sometimes it's better to actually think smaller, but do go kind of wide. And so I own a bunch of rental properties in a number of different cities. And if I have a problem property, I can get rid of that one property and still keep the rest of my homes. And so it's not necessarily a graduation, but to me, the next type of scaling is going to be building more villas in Bali because I did my due diligence. It seemed to make sense in theory. And now I've gone through the entire process from start to finish. And by scale, I mean maybe, and it's not for me to live in. It's a Airbnb property, which is doing very, very well. And so now scaling to me means, okay, well, this time we'll build two at a time. And if those two both go well, then maybe we do five. I don't know, but I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that because my first one went well, just like my first real estate deal went very well, doesn't mean that I've got everything figured out yet. And so we're going to scale slowly, and it's not a race to the finish line. And so, but yeah, I think quite often we think that there's this graduation. Oh, it's like you can't do single family homes anymore because you've been doing it too long. It's like do what is I always tell people feed your bank account, not your ego. And quite often we want to do bigger things because it just sounds cooler. I'd rather just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, have my team deal with it. So it takes up none of my time and enjoy my life. Be proud of not the possessions that I own, but more proud of the lifestyle that I get to have, the time I get to spend with my daughter and my grandkids, the things that I do that don't involve money or possessions or any of that stuff. So scale your life. Don't just scale your portfolio, I would say.
Totally. Now, this is a question I love asking people because you're doing incredible things and you now have grown to the point where we didn't oh my gosh, we skipped over it. Like when did you actually start speaking and doing instruction side of this? I want to hear that story because nobody knows yet except me.
Oh, well, once again, I just, it's kind of funny. I'll tell you another story again. When I was in university, um, when I got my first degree, we had to do a research project and then we had to present it in front of the rest of the class. And I was so terrified to present it. I did all the work, I did all the research. And then when it came the day to actually go and present it, I like had a panic attack and I skipped that day and I got a zero. And so it's very ironic that I'm even speaking on stages at all. So anyway, as a Canadian, I started investing in the US probably like 20 years ago almost. And back then there were very few Canadians investing in the US. There were some Canadians I knew who bought vacation homes, but none of them were buying rental properties. They were just happy to invest in Canada. And so anyway, this is previous to the big shakeup of 2007, 2008, when we saw everything come crashing down. But when that did happen, when the economy went the other direction, I got a call out of the blue by a pretty prestigious company that does a lot of trainings. And they called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Mike," they basically couldn't get people to show up at their events in the US anymore because Americans were like terrified of real estate after what happened. But Canadians, for us, we didn't get hit that bad by the recession. And our dollar relative to yours shot up. And all of a sudden, every Canadian investor, that's what they wanted to do is buy US real estate. And so this company started to tour across Canada. And I get a call out of the blue saying, "Hey, Mike, we're looking for a Canadian who's invested in the US to bring on as a guest speaker. And yours is the only name that comes up. Every single person we ask saying, oh, you got to call Mike Wolf. You got to call Mike Wolf. And so I get this call out of the blue. And had it been like a real estate investment club, I would have said no. Had it been just about anybody, I would have said no. But this is a pretty big name, and I couldn't really say no to it. So I semi reluctantly uh, went and spoke at my first gig, which was like around 500 people, which was terrifying. And in my mind, I was like stuttering and sweating profusely. And I thought I totally bombed. And in a way, I was relieved. I thought there's no way they're going to invite me back. But afterwards, nobody else noticed that I was freaking out. They all thought that, like, I had somebody come up to me and he said, man, that was amazing. How long have you been speaking for? And I said, it feels like forever. And it really did feel like forever. But I continued to tour across Canada with them and speak at their events for over a year. And by the time that year was done, I was getting more and more confident where I didn't feel like I had to have everything memorized word for word. And I could kind of be more myself and more just speak from the heart. And
Yeah.
it got to a point where I actually started to enjoy it. So I went from the person scared to be on a stage to put in a position where I'd be really dumb to say no to being on the stage. And then during 2000, what was it, 2021, I got asked to do a TEDx talk. So I went from full circle from not able to talk in front of an audience to that. And so you got to, I would recommend, sometimes your brain is going to tell you you can't do certain things.
Mhm.
And you can push yourself, you can get out of your comfort zone. And I've got to say that the ability to go and communicate and be on stages and be on podcasts and and shoot videos on YouTube, all these things that I didn't think I could do, having the ability to do that has definitely helped my career in many, many ways. And I like to think it's also helped a lot of other people who have come across some of my stuff or watched me on the stage and hopefully learn something from it. And so anyway, push yourself, get out of your comfort zone, do things that you don't think you can do, and watch as all the magic starts to come into your life.
100%. I love that you personally now never even realized it, but you are creating such a ripple effect because of the people that you're teaching how to do. And then they're able to go and change their like financial future of that, whether it's like DIY done with you, style, or like you totally do it for them. But in that, you keep showing up. And I love that about you. Like, do you keep why do you keep trying so hard for yourself, for your clients, for your future properties? Like what's your drive inside of yourself?
To me, I actually don't feel like I'm trying that hard. Number one is I love to I do a lot of volunteering, not to do with quite often not to do with real estate. After Hurricane Katrina, I built a team. We fixed a bunch of homes. That was a real estate related project. But a lot of the projects are like bringing clean drinking water to places hit by hurricanes. Anyway, I love to give back, but what better way to give back than in the thing that I'm an expert at? And so a lot of people call me up with real estate questions, travel questions, and for me, it's just easy. Like it's not like I have to prepare or it's not a big deal for me. And I think the biggest reason why I like to do that, though, beyond of course wanting to help people, is when I first started, nobody thought I was going to succeed. I was extremely shy, first of all. So everybody said, you're not cut out for that. You're not going to be a real estate investor. And had I not got that first success by mistake, I didn't feel like I was being a real estate investor. I thought I was just buying something for my retirement eventually. And when it worked out, all of a sudden my confidence went up, maybe a little bit too much, which is why I bombed on the next deal. um, but all of a sudden I started to kind of come out of my shell. It's like, hey, I did that. I made that happen. And so I started to come out of my shell. And, as I mentioned, I didn't want to be on stages. In high school, I'd sit at the back of the class. I wouldn't raise my hand. I wouldn't make eye contact with the teacher. So anyway, nobody believed in me. And then when you have that voice in your head also saying, oh, who do you think you are to be a real estate investor? And everybody else around you is confirming that. So I know a lot of people that would probably make amazing real estate investors, but they don't have the confidence yet. And they don't have people cheering them on. They don't have their cheerleaders yet. And it's kind of funny because a lot of the people who, when I first started, said, oh, you're never going to make it. A lot of them are my clients now. So don't listen. If you have a dream, don't listen to what people are telling you. And even that inner voice, it very rarely has positive things to say. But I can tell you that, real estate, if you stick with it and when you get up after falling down, because it's going to happen, it's guaranteed. If otherwise you're not, if you don't fall down, that means you haven't done enough deals. So
Oh,
you
man.
will fall down at some point, and it's how you show up at that point, how you get back up and get back on your feet and keep persevering. But don't listen to all those people because they're going to say, "Oh, well, I knew you weren't going to make it." After you fail, they're going to try to knock you down even further. And like I said, a lot of those people are now my clients, and I know that could happen for anybody watching this too.
Oh, man. Well, I feel like an authentic investor because I've had my wins and I've had my losses.
Absolutely, yeah. Whenever somebody wants to do a joint venture with me, I don't do that many joint ventures these days. But when I do, if they say, "Oh, all our deals are like perfect," it's like I know they're lying or they haven't done very many deals. I would actually, if somebody comes to me and they'll tell me some of their mistakes, some of their failures, and what they did to correct that, just like I told you about that property that went really, really, really bad, and then what we've now done to counteract that so it hasn't happened again. So when somebody tells me that, then it's yes, maybe we can do some business together. If they say every deal is going perfectly, it's like, okay, I don't believe that. I don't know of any, and none of my investor friends have had a perfect track record where everything just fell into place perfectly and they timed the market just right, and their contractors showed up every day when they were supposed to. It just doesn't. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
Like
not a common thing.
100%. A tree hasn't fallen on a single property or
Oh my god.
mine air condition is still in the middle of the night. Like, what?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So at this point, everybody's thinking, I need to know this guy, Mike. How do you want people to come find you so they can see all the stuff that you have, the content that you have, and the offerings that you are about?
Yeah, well, you can just email me info at mikewolfmastery.com. And my website's the same thing, mikewolfmastery.com. And I've got a YouTube channel under that name. And I've been kind of lazy lately. So I have some older videos, but they're still very valid. Real estate hasn't really changed very much over the years. How I do real estate has changed and whatnot, but the actual strategies, especially if you're a beginner, there's not really that much difference other than it's easier because now there's just more information online, and we have AI, and we have a lot more access to information right at our fingertips. Back in the old days, due diligence was a little bit tougher, but yeah, the strategies are pretty much the same. And but I'm always happy to hear from other people that are either trying to get into this business and they don't know where to start, or maybe people that are struggling on a deal. I don't know. I love talking real estate. I can talk real estate. We could do a 24-hour podcast and
We could.
I would not get bored. I will
I
sit
wouldn't either.
through the whole thing. You'll be sleeping and I'll still be talking.
Yeah, yeah. I agree 100%. Oh my gosh. This is amazing. I love all the stuff that you've created and that you're just showing up constantly. And at this point, it's kind of your comfort zone, so people like can't really throw you a curveball. And if they do, we have people in our pocket, right? We just reach out. So
Well, that's just it. And that brings up an important point. That was one of my fears when I first started speaking on the stage, is that what if somebody asks me a question, I don't know the answer? It's perfectly fine to tell somebody, hey, I don't know the answer to that. But you know what? I'll find out and I'll let you know after. There's no harm in that. You're not, just because you're on a stage doesn't mean you're the expert at every single. Like if somebody asked me, there's types of real estate I've never done before, and I'm not an expert on it. I would connect them to the right person that I do know that's doing that. So you don't have to be the expert at everything. You don't have to know all the answers to every single question. And actually, I think it's very authentic to say, hey, you know what? I'm not an expert in that realm of real estate, and here's somebody you can talk to instead. And I think that's so. Anyway, I love all these lessons that are kind of popping up because I like to once again inspire people to get out of their comfort zone and don't let the things that slowed me down, don't let them slow you down too. Like there's
100%. I think some of the biggest part of my real estate investing is all of the motivational factors behind it to keep me going when it does go wrong or when you get, your thousandth no or no replies, just so on and so forth. But in that, I want to ask you kind of the last question, like what's your favorite one or two pieces of advice, your nuggets that you want to leave with everybody for the end of the show?
yeah. So number one is your mindset is probably the most important thing. That is your best real estate is right in here. And one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford. He said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And as time has gone on, I've realized that it's mostly, this is a confidence thing. It's not, you could teach anybody how to do real estate investing. It's not rocket science. You could teach a 5-year-old, you could teach a monkey probably, but it's a confidence to be able to go and take those first steps. And that's where I think it's really important to have somebody holding your hand with you or showing you the way. Because it's much easier to get confidence if you have somebody who's already been through that before by your side, right? And so after a couple of deals, it becomes just like I said, my second deal was a miserable failure. And I've had some other failures since then, as I mentioned, but I certainly didn't make any of the same mistakes over again. I've always learned something, and so the sooner you start, the sooner you can start making some of those mistakes. And if you do it properly, they'll be very minor. They won't let us be minor setbacks, and so just get back up again. But a lot of it, like I said, is just the confidence. And if you think you can, then you can absolutely make this happen.
I love it, man. You're just doling out nuggets of wisdom left and right. This has been an amazing episode. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody that stayed this long, thank you for staying for the whole show. I know you got like a super treat today. Come and see us again on the next one. And I look forward to seeing you guys again. So, with that, bye, everybody.
Thanks for having me.